With that, welcome again to the Gayta Science 5th anniversary event. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Kelsey Campbell, a data scientist and the founder of Gayta Science. Gayta Science is a site that's devoted to highlighting the LGBTQ plus experience using data science and analytics. And this is a volunteer side project for me and everybody else involved. So it's definitely an area that we're all really passionate about, that we like to spend our time doing. And it has been 5 whole years, which is incredible. And we've done just so many things. About a week ago, I thought it would be like a really fun activity to do like a celebration countdown with highlight posts to count down to this event. Which was a good idea, but I quickly realized like just how much we've done in the last 5 years. So making these posts became a bit of a task, but all in like the most incredible way. Like we've just really hit a lot of things. So by the numbers, last 5 years, we've published 31 things. So these are projects, blog posts, collaboration stories, data visualizations, which is about 6 a year, which is not bad at all for a side project, in my opinion. In addition to that, we've done 20 talks, presentations, interviews, stuff like that, which is something, that we enjoy doing to spread the word, do educational type stuff. And the site itself has had over 53,000 page views. Which honestly, I don't know if that's a lot or not, but to me, that meant like, I didn't click on the site 53,000 times. So it was exciting. It was some sort of validation there.
It satisfies the rule of large numbers, right?
Yeah, it seemed big. So today I'll just hit on sort of the highlights of the highlights. I won't be able to hit them all. You saw how many of those there were, but if you get a chance, definitely check out the entire thread of highlights on Twitter or Instagram if you get a chance, because I'll just be able to mention a few today before we get to the more exciting speakers. But 5 years ago this month, Gayta Science was created. To be honest, I had no idea it would become what it has. I was just someone sort of fairly new to the field of data science, really passionate about LGBTQ plus data things, and I thought the name was hilarious. So I really just started it as a way to learn, just sort of a personal outlet for my own self-growth in the field, stuff like that, to be able to work on some things that I cared a lot about. So here's just some early sketches, like embarrassing first logo drafts, stuff like that, that eventually came what it is today. The first sort of original analysis that Gayta Science did was a series on pride. We actually got our hands on historical pride parade lineups for a major city in the US, and used these to explore questions like how corporate has pride become, which vary, and how inclusive are these celebrations for our entire community, not just like white gays and lesbians. So I really enjoyed this series. I think it's just gotten more relevant since, like we found these things back in 2017, 2018. So first content, definitely a success to me. Also, less than like a year in, unexpectedly started getting like outside interest in contributing to Gayta Science. And I want to give like the biggest shout out to Max, who I think I saw joined earlier, because he was the first person to reach out and be like, oh my God, like this is awesome. I want to be a part of it. And it really opened my eyes to like the potential for the site. Like I won't pretend that I had like the vision from the beginning, but like having people reach out, having Max reach out, it made it really clear that it could be like this hub to showcase a variety of voices, give people a platform to explore things that they're interested in and they want to tell a story about. So Max got us rolling with this. He published this super fun piece where he did a network analysis of drag race lip sync battles, which RuPaul, like 100% not cool, but drag race itself like is ridiculously influential in our community. So this was ridiculously creative. And actually, like years later, I think it was 2020, we had another researcher reach out wanting to do something similar, like update this analysis. So we shared some data. It was really cool. But this guy posted it on Twitter and his network graph like blew up. It was ridiculous, to the point that out.com actually picked it up and wrote a story about it. And that was cool because they actually mentioned Max in the article and linked to his original Gayta Science story. So the site got like a ridiculous amount of traffic. So very, very cool. Huge kudos to Max for just so many reasons. And again, thank you for being like the first Gayta Sciencer.
I'm honored, thank you. And I will be following up eventually. When I get a free moment, I will return to the analysis.
Yes, it's waiting for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, no, thank you. So our team, it's grown a lot since Max. We have a Slack channel now that has over like 50 folks in it. Not like the most active of Slacks, but you know, it's just an amazing community to bounce ideas off of, collaborate on things. So definitely holler at me if that's sort of something you're interested in. I'll get you an invite, and you can join the Slack. A piece that is very much like a personal highlight for me is Plot Me Gender Fluid, which is a personal data-driven narrative about like my own gender journey and how I explored that using data and like eventually came to a place of acceptance. So super, super scary to put something like that out there, but it ended up becoming a thing, and got some really incredible feedback. It turned out it resonated with like just a number of other non-binary folks out on the internet. And to this day, it's our most popular story on the site. And it was also super fun to do my first podcast interview. I got the chance to talk with My Gay Agenda out of Philly, which is just a hilarious show. Very entertaining if you have a chance to check them out sometime. Other highlights are when we get the chance to do events and talk to different people. For example, we've gone to DC Pride a couple of times. That's me and Catherine there at DC Pride. We had this poster of identity labels with a bunch of markers. We walked around, talked to people, and made a collective data viz of people's SOGIs, which stands for sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, which is cool because everybody has one, like gay, straight, cis, trans, like any way you present yourself. So just a super fun activity and cool to see like how beautifully diverse we are as a people. The Queer Health Hackathon, also a high point. I met a good number of folks on the call there. It was an event put on by the Tegan and Sarah Foundation and Harvard Med School that like gathered a bunch of super talented people to explore LGBTQ plus health disparities in a very fun, like collaborative way. Also enjoyed the DC Data Week talk that we did. We teamed up with the LGBTQ RStats community. So shout out to Ben if he's on here from our LGBTQ, was able to get Charlie from the HRC Foundation to give us a really fascinating talk on her research with LGBTQ youth. So events, just always a treat, something we really enjoy. Also super proud of our TDOR efforts as well. We've put out this data viz since the beginning, since way back in 2017, that showcases community collected records of transgender deaths to bring awareness to the continued violence waged against the community, in particular transgender women of color globally. So we've made a number of improvements over the years to try to make this as powerful as possible. And last year, Catherine spent some time really exploring this concept a little deeper. And she put together like the most stunning like animated talk for Outlier, which is a data viz conference. And she talked about our experience visualizing these TDOR records and like proposing ways that data viz might be able to better capture things like grief and loss and devastation and like all these things that come along with death, which is just super, super relevant these days with COVID and all the charts you see surrounding that. So that work's ongoing. It's a very hard question, a very important question. Almost done, I promise. There's just too much. This is the problem on mine too. But 3 more highlights from the last couple of years. Gayta Science's film debut, which is ridiculous. It was with Road Trip Nation. And it was just so awesome. Like basically, this was a documentary where 3 like young people, Megan, Sage, Devon, take a virtual bow if you're on today. They traveled across the US and they talked to a number of folks about diversity in tech, diversity in computer science, which is just such an important conversation. And so it was a really great experience to be part of that. Also, last year, like a dream come true, I got the chance to help out on a pudding story. And the pudding is just like this amazing publication that creates the most stunning data-driven visual stories. They've just been my inspiration for years. So I got to help Jan out on this really cool story about queer representation in popular music. And the end product is just beautiful. I definitely check it out if you haven't already. And lastly, I'm also super proud of a talk from last year about transphobia and algorithms. Mostly just highlights like other people's awesome work, but it's a very important topic that's largely under discussed in the space. So more awesome things to look at. Looking to the future, we have a number of things lined up. First off, I spent like an embarrassing amount of time during the first COVID lockdowns, like making a very detailed data set of sexual representation in Orange is the New Black, which is maybe old news now, but at the time, like when this first came out, this show was like groundbreaking in the way that they portrayed lesbian relationships. So Catherine and I, back in 2020, we explored a number of things related to the show and how they showed things. We haven't really found the story that we're excited to do yet. We're still kind of putting that on hold for a little bit, but one day we're going to circle back and it's going to be really cool. We've also had a long-standing idea on creating like an interactive tool that helps someone navigate all the different resources that are out there for inclusively asking for gender on surveys, which is a question that I get a lot, but it's like a very loaded question because there's so many different schools of thought out there. So we've been drafting something that will hopefully look really cool and be really easy to use that help people navigate that decision. Also, I've recently started working with Vatty, who unfortunately couldn't join today, but we've been working on an analysis related to queer representation in media. So we're thinking about things like casting, narrative, stuff like that. We just collected like an enormous amount of data from like a crowdsourced emotional spoiler site, which I'm really excited to dig into. I think it's going to be really cool. Later this month as well, I'm going to be part of a panel discussing anti-trans disinformation, which is an issue that I'm super, super passionate about and really would love to spend more time working on. So that's what we got in the works. Lots of stuff to look forward to in the future. But I have definitely talked way more than enough for now. We have lightning talks to get to in a minute, but I did want to end with like the biggest of thank yous to everyone on this call. Like if you are on this call, you have been an incredible support and you're definitely like extremely appreciated. This community just like constantly inspires me. Like every social media share, every like, it makes a difference. And I'm like just incredibly humbled at like everyone who supports, who, you know, we've had sponsors on Patreon, which is huge, definitely a huge help. And lastly, just like the biggest thank you to our speakers tonight. We have Tasha, Cory, Casi, and of course, Story Squad for hosting a really cool game afterwards. So yeah, that was a quick whirlwind highlight tour, but I will stop reminiscing and we will get to the meat of the day or the night. We have 3 really, really cool lightning talks today, a couple technical topics, some data things, and I'm stoked. So I will pass things over to Tasha, if that's cool, and we'll get going.
Thank you, Kelsey. I am having a little bit of a video issue, but I think I'm about to work it out. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And just got to mark the right portion of the screen and we should be golden. I literally have 4 different webcam type apps open right now to kind of throw this together. So I'm happy if it's working at all. Is it working?
Yeah, it looks great. Are you sharing a screen or anything? We see you.
See me with the green background and filled?
Yeah, is that intended?
Yeah, that is intended. And you see the slides changing, right?
Oh my God, they're behind you. Okay. What? All right, you just blew my mind already. So I'm going to get off mute so you don't hear my commentary.
No, I mean, Kelsey, you have done so much work. And so much really good and important work. I'm blown away at this point. It's wow, I think you might be one of my new idols. So we're gonna hopefully be talking. You really rock. But let me go ahead and get to the presentation here and we'll get going here. Okay, so yeah, thank you, Kelsey, and thank you everyone else. And congratulations, everyone, on another year of fighting the good fight. I know today is indeed a celebration, but I'm going to start with sharing a rather disheartening data science related experience with you. I believe many, though, if not all of us here have likely had similar experiences. Here's mine, though. So one day I'm going about my business, coding, checking out recent advances in AI and deep learning, et cetera, et cetera. You know how it goes. And I receive an email which explains that OpenAI's GPT-3 is open and I can get started using it. This is really super exciting moment for me. I've been looking forward to it for quite a while. So after playing around with it in their playground for a little while, I have this tremendous idea about how we can use it at Story Squad. And this is just going to be a total game changer, I think to myself. You know, this is going to enable this product and our goals and ways that is just going to be, game changing for us. Unfortunately, though, to my extreme dismay, as I'm crafting the context document, it spits out this gem right here that you see on the slide. It's a lovely description of a fictional woman who happens to be trans, but then it has this content warning. This absolutely infuriates me. I was mad for a couple weeks, actually, because I know that if this is left to stand this way, that apps created using GPT-3 by default will filter out our very existence. And trans people, gay people, anybody likely on our spectrum just won't be mentioned. So absolutely infuriating to me. Fortunately, though, that's not where this ends. That's not where this story ends. So a few weeks later, I received an email invitation to a meeting with someone from OpenAI to share my experience with their product. During that meeting, I expressed just how useful and enabling their product is for us here at Story Squad. And then I made sure at the end to really detail my experience and with the content warning to really explain what that means for us. And I ended up having an overwhelmingly positive interaction with Joanne. Not just because of her professional handling of my concerns, but because of her winning personality. And you know what? I think that's where the magic is. In any interaction with humans, the magic is in personality. So that's what I want to talk about today. Personality is magic. For example, we have small talk with very little factual, quote unquote, valuable exchange, just for the fun of it, just because it's fun. We enjoy it. We come out feeling better very often. A little personality can make a boring factual exchange interesting and even motivating, giving us that extra energy to just get all of our goals done or think of things in a different light. Personality is where it's at. And in longer conversations, our own personal charisma helps maintain our focus and our interest in a conversation. You see, when we have great conversations with other human beings, our personalities are front and center. We express ourselves and learn about each other through those expressions. The value of the conversation goes far beyond the hard facts being exchanged. So when we speak to an AI assistant that has basically zero personality, we are probably going to come up feeling not so great, just like Bezos here. So at Story Squad, our first finished product is Word Hoax. It's a multi-purpose type of game, but one such use is as a meeting icebreaker. It gets everyone in the room laughing and creatively engaged. We imagine offices, teams, classes, etc., using this to take their collective collaboration and creativity to the next level. The game uses bots empowered by personalities that can play alongside and outwit their human counterparts. In this way, it's kind of a zany Turing test. So personality is kind of complicated, but in a more limited scope of a game, you can think of the personality of a bot as the sum of its interactions with the people in the game. In Word Hoax, the bots interact through playing the game, which involves mainly coming up with definitions of random words, biographies of people, and synapses of movies. If you throw in the ability for it to choose which player definition it likes the most, and to explain why it chose that definition, then you get a bot that can play Word Hoax. It's actually rather easy as well to get started defining the specifics of a bot's personality. There are two main data points that allow you to craft the personality without even training the model. That's right, no training necessarily needed. The context document's one, and then there's several lists of logits, probabilities for each possible query type. I'll briefly explain. So in a nutshell, this is how completions work. You send the API some text and some parameters about how it should respond, including, for instance, the length of the response and the stop sequence. Then the API sends you a completion consisting of words that make up a coherent completion of the text you sent in to begin with. There are these two really useful properties of the model. Number one, it follows the pattern of the text that you send it and will reliably generate completions that follow that pattern. So for instance, over here, the pattern that you're sending is you have a P and then a parentheses, and I think applesauce is yummy, and it can see that it has to have an R before it does a response. And if you follow that pattern in the data that you send it, it will continue to follow that pattern as a completion. Also, number two, its responses will make sense. So for instance, here where we have given it an example of food and a social event, it won't get upset when you throw it a curveball. Like if you ask it what it thinks about calculus, it won't come back and tell you that calculus is tasty. I don't know what it will do, but it won't say that calculus is tasty. And so our second main data point we use is logits. So logits simply refers to sending a list of modifiers to the probability for each word. So if in a given part of the completion, the name Alan has a 25% probability of being the next word, and your logits list specifies that it should have a negative 100% modifier, then the name Alan would change to have a 0% probability instead. This is of course, it is of course possible to correlate certain words with useful features, like length or general sentiment. These features can be used to define bots then that prefer to use words with those features. For instance, maybe a bot that is meant to interface with youngsters should stick to shorter words, just not 4-letter shorter words maybe. Okay, so wrap it all of this functionality up I just detailed into a snazzy package with flair and style. And what do you have? Word Hoax, you have an embodied AI with personality. Word Hoax bots are to be embodied in amazing functional representations that will allow people to interact with them inside all of the apps and games that are coming from Story Squad. We are going to be having a bot NFT release soon. If you would like to, just send me some your inquiries to my email address here, tashaskyup@gmail.com. And Story Squad, we are, sorry about that. I think I'm over my time or something. I hear it being, okay. At Story Squad, we are a squad of creative and talented individuals with a passion to bring people together using technology, responsibly and creatively to make the world a better place. We are going to be having this NFT release soon. Please send your inquiries to my email address. That would be spectacular. I've spoken a lot about Word Hoax. We are, however, having the actual game that I encourage you all to join. It is a lot of fun later on tonight. And hopefully I will see you there. Thank you.
That is awesome. That's very cool. If anyone has questions, just unmute yourself, put them in the chat. But I had a question. What's like the hardest? So you talked about like trying to program or train like the different personality traits and stuff using logits and stuff. But like, what's the hardest thing? Is there like a certain personality dimension that's like hardest to train, or how have you found that?
Yeah, thank you. That's a wonderful question. Right now, we're having a lot of fun trying to figure out how to make it lie. You know, how to make it kind of be false and to have the idea of lying as a way of winning. And
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's not only personality; it's like personality and like a game dimension, because you said they're trying to win. Huh.
Right.
That's really cool.
Yeah, Word Hoax is it's very involved. There's a way to play it, and there's like a way to play it in kind of like a meta way, where you're not actually playing the game, but you're still getting points differently. It's very involved game. It's a lot of fun.
I did watch, so just so everyone's, Tasha sent like a recording of a previous Word Hoax game when she was proposing to do it for this event, and it's like super awesome. So please stick around after the event. They're going to be hosting that sort of parallel to a networking session. It's going to be really cool. Yeah, any other questions or last thoughts? All right, well, we might pass it over to Cory now. Thank you, again. That was
Thank you.
really cool.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry, my keyboard didn't work earlier, but could I ask a quick question to Tasha?
Oh, please, yes.
Yeah, hi, thanks for your presentation. I'm sorry if I missed this because I missed the beginning, but could you please tell us a little more about the construction of your team, whether you have sociolinguists or like other social sciences people in your team?
Yeah, so on that side of things, we have a distinguished author, Greg Peterson, and we also have a accomplished educator, Janine, who I don't think was actually able to make it here tonight, unfortunately.
Mhm. Thank you.
No, go ahead,
Thank you.
please.
I just asked because I think it may be challenging to create a personality and not touch on the issue of stereotypes or generalizing things. So I can see that it's a very tricky job, but it sounds really cool.
It is tricky, and we probably would benefit from someone who specifically studied personalities. So yeah, we are a fluid kind of team, and we have people who kind of come and contribute, and then we have them kind of go away and then come back. So if you know anybody who's interested, or you yourself are, please just chat me up, send me an email.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your project with us.
Thank you.
Oh, very cool. All right. I will pass it over to Cory if you're ready. Awesome. I'm very excited for this. All right.
Thanks, Kelsey. Yeah, so I'll get into the talk itself in just a second. I did want to take a second, just like the prior speaker, and thank Kelsey for setting up this community and giving us all the chance to hopefully collaborate on some fun projects. That is actually, that's sort of why I'm here, is because I'm sort of a machine learning expert who happens to be queer. And I really admire the mission of wanting to tell queer stories using data science. And I feel like I don't have a sense of what the best stories to tell are. I just know how to do this weird machine learning stuff. So I am super open and thrilled for anyone who wants to message me and talk collaboration, or maybe we can talk after the presentations. I'll have my email in a further slide for anybody that wants to get a screenshot of that. So without any further ado, I'll also, if you want to follow these links to any of the actual papers that I'll be talking about today, none of these are my own work. They're just sort of a good general background on a lot of how this particular machine learning model works. So I sort of want to motivate this by talking about a type of machine learning called contrastive learning. So when we talk about machine learning, very frequently we talk about things like classification, or the great GPT example that we just saw is trying to fill in some text. Contrastive learning is sort of a different setup. In contrastive learning, we want to take some kind of complicated data set and we want to embed it. Computers basically operate on vectors in some high dimensional space, right? So we want to take our data, which is interpretable by humans, it lives in the real world, it has complicated multidimensional facets, and we want to embed it into computer language, into this Euclidean embedding space, so that things that are similar in some kind of abstract human concept of similarity are similar in terms of their distance to each other inside the Euclidean space, right? So just as an example, right, if we have a picture of our lab assistant, Buckaroo, and we feed that picture into some machine learning model, that's going to spit out a point in n-dimensional Euclidean space, right? It's just a vector. It's a list of numbers. And we would hope that the machine learning model has captured some of the essential characteristics of our lab assistant here, right? And then if we feed a different picture that is decidedly not Buckaroo into the machine learning model, it gets embedded into some different place in the embedding space. And what we would hope is that there are ways to train this machine learning model such that if we give it another picture of some category, so in this case, another dog, that the embedding it ends up with is similar to other dogs in the embedding space, right? So in this case, we have 2 dogs in our data set, and those points ended up nearby one another versus the elephant point, which is far away from those 2 points in our embedding, right? So this is what we mean when we say contrastive learning. And I promise this is my only equation in the whole talk. The way we do that is by minimizing a loss function like this one. There are lots of variants on this. Don't worry if it's, it's late for a lot of us. Don't worry about interpreting this exactly. What this equation is saying is if I have a pair of data points and I've calculated some distance between them, that if that distance is bigger than some margin and the 2 things are in the same category, then, well, I want to adjust the way I did my embedding so that the points move closer together. And on the other hand, if they're from different categories and the distance is smaller than some threshold, I want to push them further apart, right? So the way I always think about this is that I have a whole bunch of rubber bands that are connecting data points that are the same category and a bunch of really pushy springs that are connecting data points that are in different categories. And I just sort of wire up all of the data points and I get this gnarled ball of data points and springs and rubber bands. And I just sort of release it and let it find its equilibrium. And hopefully, if I did that correctly, I'll end up with an embedding where all of the points that are the same category are pulled closer together by rubber bands, and points that are different categories are getting pushed further apart by springs, right? And hopefully that ends up meaning that if I have a new picture of a dog or a new picture of an elephant, that kind of guided by this big complex array of rubber bands and springs, future data examples I have get classified the right way, right? So that's contrastive loss. I sort of, things are freezing, sorry about that. I sort of skipped over, I just represented my machine learning model as a black box earlier, right? So a very common machine learning model when we're talking about images is something called a convolutional neural network. So again, if we have our picture of Buckaroo, we apply a whole bunch of image filters, and those filters are actually learned, right? They're not just flat edge detectors, but they're sort of more complicated. I don't really have time to cover the details of a convolutional neural network, but this is a machine learning model that specializes in images that debuted in around 2012. And it's the reason why, basically it's the reason why we can do things like Snapchat filters now. And you can maybe argue that that's a positive gain or positive loss for society. I don't know, but the point is this learned local filter idea is really the core concept there. We have little tiny image filters, and the model can adjust those filters so that it detects features in the images that are relevant to the specific task, right? So this is a good model for images because, if you look at this picture of Buckaroo, there's a lot of redundant information in the pixels, right? There's a big area of Buckaroo that is just all dark black. The background behind him is all dark white. We don't necessarily need to represent every pixel with perfect fidelity. We might want to pick out features about Buckaroo, like his dumb little floppy ear or his button nose, right? And those will help us classify the image as having a cute dog or a cute but less cute elephant, right? But that all breaks down if we have data that's not structured in a nice, neat grid like images, right? So here in this example, we were extracting little local filters from an image, and we can do that because images are nice. Images live on a grid. But if we have data that's unstructured, well, how do we do that? And this leads us to this new technique called a graph neural network or graph convolution. They're technically different, but they end up being used pretty much interchangeably. The basic idea behind both of these models, the image-based one and the graph-based one, is we have some way to aggregate information in little local neighborhoods. So local neighborhoods in the image, or in kind of unstructured network land, we might think about aggregating sort of information from a node and its immediate neighbors, for example. And then we have some kind of nonlinear function of that aggregation. So if you've studied neural networks, you know that in between every layer, we have to have a nonlinear function. That's where they really get their expressive power. And then finally, each node kind of updates its internal state according to that function. Again, this is getting a little more technical than I'd like to be, but it's basically the same idea in both contexts, right? So we have learned filters for little regions of pixels, or we have learned filters for little local areas of networks, right? Each node looks at its neighbors and makes a decision about what its label should be, right? And I'm going to kind of skip over these slides. The basic idea is that there's this thing you can do. You take a graph, you construct something called the graph Laplacian, which is just a matrix based on the connectivity of that graph. It turns out that the Laplacian matrix describes what diffusion looks like over the nodes of the graph. So if I put a dollop of ink or heat on a particular node, how does that spread to other places in the graph? Turns out that behavior is totally determined by the graph Laplacian. I looked at graph Laplacians way too much over the course of my PhD. Surprisingly, I'm not sick of them, but I'm getting there. As an example, right, if I have some arbitrary network that I found and I put a unit of heat down, I can explicitly calculate what it looks like for that heat to diffuse outwards, right? By just taking powers of the graph Laplacian over and over again. So this is sort of a simulation in some sense of what it looks like if I have heat spreading through the nodes of my graph from some source. And it turns out that the way to make graph neural networks work is just by running this exact same diffusion model. So each node diffuses information to its neighbors. After it gets information from neighbors, it makes a choice about how to update its own kind of internal representation. And then you repeat that process. And you stack up several layers of that process. And by the end, you have predictions for every node in the network. That's sort of the end of the technical what are GNNs part of the talk. And now I just want to rapid fire go through some interesting examples of how GNNs have been used in the last couple of years. So the example that really broke GNNs wide open was Citation Networks. So I have a big network of which papers have cited other papers, and I want to seed that with some small number of labels, right? Labels are really hard to acquire. They require a lot of human labor. So I'm going to seed the network with a small number of labels, and then I'm going to use a graph neural network to try to predict labels for all the other unlabeled nodes in the network based on who cites who, right? It's the idea that if a paper cites a whole bunch of computer science papers, it's probably also a computer science paper, right? So in this case, our input is a bunch of links that represent who cites who and some small number of labeled papers. And the output's going to be labels for everything else on the network. And so the authors were able to show like they got some big percentage, like 90% of labels correct for papers on the archive, right? Just by doing this. Another really cool example from the last couple of years is physical simulations, right? So on the left is an actual simulated blob of water in a glass cage. On the right is a graph neural network that has been taught to kind of obey physical rules. So in this case, the input to the graph neural network is the location of each particle. So this water is not actually liquid, it's a bunch of particles. The input's going to be the location of each particle at time t and what other particles it's close to, and the output's going to be where that particle should be at the next step of the simulation, right? And this turns out to just work, right? And they get really, really good, realistic looking results. And then they show that, you know, you can take that trained network and you can scale it up to like much bigger simulations than the ones that you trained it on, once it's learned to obey the physical laws. Another example from very, very recently is like totally solving the problem of predicting the structure of proteins. This is like a famous problem from biology that's been around for like 50 years. So if I just know what amino acids are in a protein, can I predict the three-dimensional structure? And the three-dimensional structure of a protein is what determines whether it's medicine or poison, right? And so this problem was like solved to atom level accuracy just in the last year by a team that was using graph neural networks. So these are a super interesting, super powerful research tool. And then, you know, sort of another example, maybe less life-changing for all of us, but still impacting our day-to-day is predicting traffic. So I take my road network, I represent it as a graph, and I can learn kind of the dynamics of how traffic flows in that graph. And that should help me predict, you know, how long it takes me to get to a particular place. Really briefly, because I'm egotistical, I want to cover my own graph neural network work. So my collaborators gave me a bunch of these microscope images of two different kinds of Arabidopsis. Arabidopsis is the wild turnip plant. It's a really commonly studied model organism in plant biology studies, right? So on the left here, we have kind of the wild plant. On the right, we have a mutant plant that has a mutation that causes cell division to be different. And it's not exactly clear to the biologists why or exactly how that cell division is different. You can just kind of tell looking at it that it's more random, it's spikier, right? And so what I did was I took all those cell images, I segmented them to find individual cells, and then I can take those segmented cell images and define little local graph neighborhoods based on which cells are up against other cells in the graph, right? So now I have a data set of graphs with labels that say whether that's a graph that comes from regular cell division or mutant cell division. And it turns out that if I train a graph neural network on that problem, I get a really nice separated embedding. So those are the two categories. Don't worry about what the axes mean. Don't worry about the matrix at the left, but these are two really nicely separated categories. And in the end, I was able to use that model to show kind of quantitatively the exact ways that the mutants have different cell division than the regular the regular plants. So this is sort of giving a strong answer to a question that the biologists had using graph neural networks. Anyway, that's I think basically all I have. This is my email if you'd like to take a screenshot of it, and I'm happy to answer questions. Like I said earlier, I really feel like I'm here because I desperately want to use the expertise that I have to tell interesting data science stories about, I don't know, maybe social networks of queer people. I think that could be a really interesting application of this type of machine learning model. So that's all I have, and I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Woo! That was wow. I've heard a lot of like not high level, but like explanations of deep learning before throughout the years. And that was like one of the most clear. I put it in the chat. Like I actually understood a lot, and it's, you know, late at night. So kudos for that introduction. And I'm also wondering like how like neural nets or graph neural nets can be applied to like the problems that I'm interested in. Like I am more interested in more of those social problems where like traditionally a lot of these like black boxy models don't do the best at. So that's definitely an area I want to explore, but I don't we'll have to talk. We'll have to talk and get some other people in the conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Definitely, if anyone has questions for Cory, shout them out, put them in the chat.
Sorry, don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
Please.
Okay, I do have a question, Cory. Thank you. That was a really great presentation, and I was looking for a good presentation on the contrastive networks earlier last week, actually. And so I do have a question, though. The Laplacian kind of image that's created from the graph network, the graph Laplacian, is that necessarily two-dimensional? Can it be n-dimensional? What's common practice there?
Trying to decide how technical to get. The Laplacian basically is not, we represent it as a matrix when we are investigating it and looking at it, but it's not really, the technical term is that it's a finite difference operator on the nodes of the graph. It's not really, maybe by analogy, if I take a graph and I represent its adjacency using a matrix, that doesn't necessarily mean that the graph is an image or that the graph is a two-dimensional anything. That's just sort of a convenient human interpretable representation of which nodes are connected to which other nodes. And in the same way, the Laplacian's not really an image per se, it's a representation of, okay, if I hypothetically wanted to take little local averages of information on the nodes of my graph, who would I need to have communicating with whom, right? That's sort of what the Laplacian represents, is it's a way for you to take some signal, like those sparse labels on citation network papers, right? I have some signal and I want to efficiently have each node communicate its label to other nodes in the graph. And the Laplacian is just one way for each node to take those little local averages that end up getting turned into labels.
Excellent. I see. Thank you. That's an excellent explanation.
I think I see in the chat that there's a question about what package I use to work with graph neural networks. So there's kind of a schism in the machine learning world. A lot of people use TensorFlow, a lot of people use PyTorch. There's kind of pluses and minuses to both. I am a big fan of PyTorch because what I do as a machine learning researcher means that I need the flexibility that PyTorch offers. And I'm also like, I'm not going to be running a model 1,000 times in parallel on a massive data center, which is what TensorFlow is really good at. So I use PyTorch, and specifically there's a package called PyTorch Geometric that is pretty easy to set up out of the box and lets you do all kinds of interesting graph neural network kind of things.
Sweet. Thank you, Cory. That was very, very cool. And I'm sure you'll be around a little bit after if people have more math questions for you on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, exactly. And again, please email me. I'm really excited to talk to folks.
Sweet. All right.
Thanks,
We have one last lightning talk. I'm sorry we're running a little late, cutting into our after party time, but not gonna want to miss it because we've just had a lot of math, so we need a little less math. So I'm gonna introduce Casi, who is my partner and an amazing school counselor, and was going to talk a little bit about their experience with queerness in schools, which is something I hear a lot about, and I think you should too. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to bring up my screen, so give me 1 second. Normally I don't have issues with this, so let me do this. Okay, I have to ask the age-old question. Can you see my screen?
It looks beautiful. That is a cool cursor.
Thank you.
Cool setups are amazing.
All right. So I apologize, it's getting a little bit late, so I might go a little bit quicker than I had anticipated. So I'm gonna kind of shift everything on its head here and kind of go into schools and the data and different policies and well-beings and so on that goes into being queer in school, whether you're a staff member, an adult, a student, and so on. So just a little bit about me. So I go by Mixed Leisure. Leisure is my last name. I've been in public education for 14, 15 years or so. I've worked at all different levels. So I started off when I was 19 being a substitute teacher. I was a full-time language arts teacher, college career readiness teacher, a coach. Now I'm a professional high school counselor. So I've kind of had different experiences at different levels, also in about 3 different states as well. So from Indiana to North Carolina to Maryland, even though we live in DC, I haven't really touched DC public schools yet. And I also volunteer at a queer leadership youth summer camp as well. So going into this summer and into the rest of hopefully many coming years, I'm also starting private practice for queer youth as well, which I'm very, very excited about. If you interact with Gayta Science on Instagram, you're more than likely interacting with me. And I am also, I believe, Gayta Science's biggest fan ever. I've seen the thought process going from day one, 5 years later, and Kelsey, I tell you all the time how proud I am of you, but you're just amazing. And everybody that is here because of what you stand for and what you've put together. So, all right. So let me go ahead and just kind of talk about why we're mentioning schools and queer youth, because in the news, we all hear about the different bills and the different things that are trying to get passed and are attacking our queer youth and attacking our queers in public education and education in general. So for example, we got the infamous Don't Say Gay bill going from K through 3 grades in Florida. A lot of copycat states are also following in line. We also have the issues in Texas going along with a very hateful way of saying that gender affirming care is child abuse. We have a lot of hateful things being thrown at our students and thrown at our youth, especially with being trans and non-binary, in the bathroom, the locker rooms, and also our sex ed that they're being taught in schools. Are they being taught inclusive sex ed, book bans, and so on? So a lot of this stuff is scapegoating policies in schools and a lot of disinformation that we see on a day-to-day basis. So I'm just going to touch on a few things very, very quickly about data and research, kind of where to find some quality LGBTQ plus youth information, and also what it kind of takes to have an inclusive school in general, opposed to just using names and pronouns. So the LGBTmap.org is a very inclusive site that goes across different parts of the US about issues and bills and policies that have passed already. And the Equality Federation is a little bit more of what's happening in the moment. So 2 different platforms that you can check out. The map one, you can kind of get lost in it, even though I'm not the biggest data person. That site is phenomenal in what they have on there. So research in schools, Gleason, I love to use their school climate survey. They have started since 2001 up until I think 2019 is the most recent one. Every other year, they put together a survey and they send out to our youth in the US, asking them questions about their comfortability in the classrooms. Do they feel loved and supported? To hate crimes, and so on. So Gleason has one of the best, I think, surveys to kind of get that raw data, and the way they put it together is also very lovely. The Human Rights Campaign focuses a little bit more on the younger students, not as up to date, but still a good resource for finding that research within schools as well. So the research for the youth well-being, the Trevor Project, as we all know, does a lot with LGBTQ plus mental health research, and has also gotten to a point that it's getting moved into academic research and used for a lot of big pieces and a lot of big stories and kind of projects as well. Like I said, I apologize, I'm going a little quicker than I thought, but so with all of that being discussed in the media, things being banned, a lot of big things kind of outside of the school environment, creating an inclusive school looks a little bit differently when you open the doors to that school building. So anti-bullying policies, staff training, dress code policy is huge, it's massive. I've been at schools where I have asked them to update their language and their inclusivity for their dress code policies within the last like 5 years, which is sad to say that it's all of this stuff is happening behind doors and in these classrooms and in these school buildings as well. I added the school website on there. So one thing I look for in public education, since the internet and social media is massive, trying to find on a school website or school social media page, different ways that the school is including, either names or pronouns, and also different representation, which down at the bottom corner, representation is, I think, probably one of the biggest reasons why I am in public education. So by the time I was 19 to now, I've had a lot of students that they seek me out. So when I was a teacher, I would have students during lunch and after school and in between classes. A lot of our queer youth would seek me out. And at that time, I wasn't feeling safe enough to be out myself. So just representation, looking and kind of being that safe space for them is huge. Let me go ahead and, yes, okay, so that was our last slide. I also do a lot of staff trainings and PDs with my own staff, but a lot of times that's just in one school building. So it's hard to be that representation and be that person everywhere, but trying to disperse knowledge and updated resources, at least with the people that I work with. So, okay, sorry, I went kind of quick, but I hope that kind of got the gist of what I wanted to say and what I wanted to present here. But if you do have questions, you can ask them now. If it is about policies, I apologize, I'm not the biggest policy person. I'm more of a mental health expert, but you can also email me as well too.
Yay! That was great. Thank you. I definitely, it's just been so much talk about like the school policies and like the effect they're having on kids. And so I'm really excited that you're able to give us a quick rundown. Does anyone have questions or any discussion points? Ooh, Cory.
Yeah, I guess.
Real hand.
I guess I just with a lot of this stuff I feel at a loss because I'm privileged enough to live in a state that's not enacting legislation like that, and I can and do donate some of my paycheck to gender affirming advocacy organizations, but like other than that, what can us folks, what can we do?
No, that's Yeah, that's a heavy question, I think. That's because we
In
also
30 seconds or less. Can you just solve it for us?
There we go. No, I think that's the heavy question that we all walk around with, is seeing that these youth are being, attacked, and we want to protect them. We want to be there for them. I would say a lot of times, if you are somebody that's knowledgeable in the community and also somebody that you have something that you can present and update other people's knowledge on, you can reach out to, a lot of schools have community coordinators. Reaching out to a school and just saying, hey, can I present? Hey, do you have a career day? Is there a team already going? You might have to go through, background checks and fingerprinting, but just being a part of the schools as a volunteer. And in schools, I encourage students. So when I work at the LGBT summer camp, we encourage them to do gay straight alliances at school and start their own clubs to kind of work from the inside out. But yeah, I feel that question a lot. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for a great presentation.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And for the work that you do.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. So at this point, we had, let me share again. I'm not sure how tired people are of party time, but we did have like a little trivia planned. I don't know if people are feeling that, or if we just want to go right to the networking after party where we have some, social options. People have thoughts.
The trivia is only 10 questions, and whoever wins gets a little merch package. I'm just saying, just throwing that out there.
But yeah, it's totally, yeah, I don't want to take away from networking. I know that I was kind of interested more in the networking piece, but I also do enjoy trivia because I played last night and it was hilarious. Okay. Oh man, we have one of each. Who's a tiebreaker?
I would like to do the trivia.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Let's do it.
Thank you. Okay, let's do trivia. But like quick, is that enough? Is quick trivia an option?
I think so.
Flash trivia?
Yes, I'll move very quickly right through. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen here. So if you want to go to, I'll even put it in the chat just in case. Kahoot.it. Kahoot.it as I go ahead and share my screen. So I do want to say that while I'm getting this set up, so also here's the game pin. If you're playing, are you able to see that? I love asking those questions. Can you hear me? Can you come up screen? So our game ID is 4360987. While everybody is logging in, I did want to say one thing in terms of Road Trip Nation. So a huge crossover for me in the education world is as a high school counselor, I actually use Road Trip Nation videos for career exploration for my students. And I get to assign Kelsey as homework. So that's fantastic. All right. This looks like a good amount. Am I missing anybody? Oh, there's Tasha. Oh. Kelsey's mom. Sorry, I had it. That's adorable. That's adorable.
My mom uses Zoom. My mind is blown. I can't handle this.
That's awesome. Hi, Kim. All right. If you happen to get kicked out of the game, or if you're joining late, the code will be down at the bottom of the screen. So let's go ahead and get started here. Unless you're like, no, wait for me. Like Marjorie. Sorry, Marjorie.
Quickly, it's asking me if I see my name, but it doesn't give me the option to say yes or no. Oh, well, there we are. Never mind. It brought me into the main with everyone else's name. Okay.
Yes,
I'm good.
okay. Thank you for checking. Another educator tool is Kahoot. The kids love it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Also, these are all about Gayta Science, by the way, so if you were paying attention. So Gayta Science began in what year? Some of them might be a little simple. We will see. So we have 2015, 2017, 1999, or way in the future in 2027. Don't be shy. All right, and
How do you answer?
oh, so you should have on the screen or the device that you're using should pop up different colors. And some of you might actually have questions on your device as well, the one that you're using.
Okay, mine did pop up different colors. I clicked on one. It just didn't show if I had selected it or not. So I think though it did accept the answer, 2017.
Okay, I hope so. I hope so. I'm so sorry if it didn't. I really hope so. But let's see if it's. Oh, there we go. Okay. Wow, this is a close one already. Quick math. Quick math. All right, so Gayta Science currently has how many followers on Twitter? So about 20,800, 1,600, or there are too many to count. Go. Who got in there first? Can I hit skip on there? Let me see. Yes, so about 1,600 Gayta Sciencers on Twitter. Wow, ooh, those numbers. Oh, that changed. That changed. Who's gonna get the merch? I don't know. All right, so SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation, G.I. Joe Elephants. A special organization, Gather in Sex and Entertaining. Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Evaporation. Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity and Expression. Don't guess too quickly. Could be evaporation. All right. There we go. Yes. Oh, oh no. We got some wishful thinking there. Let's see how that changed up our numbers. Ooh, Sage is now on the board. All right. Let's see what we got here. Gayta Science's most visited project is Plot Me Gender Fluid, Gay Pay in the USA, Visualizing Anti-Trans Violence. Yes, Plot Me Gender Fluid. Very nice. Let's see these numbers. Ooh, Cory, ooh, a little fire thing up there. All right, let's keep this moving. In September 2019, Gayta Science presented at this conference. Pam, pancakes, ABCDE, or See, I don't, is that PA? See, oh, so many data. So much data tonight. Yes. Ooh, I think, I threw some people off with the Pam. All right. And our numbers jumps. Okay, we got Darwin up there now.
I'm coming for you, Darwin.
Those are fighting words. Those are fighting words. Okay. So Gayta Science needs how many more YouTube subscribers to make a custom URL? We might be hinting at this. So we have about 3 more, around 87 more, around 55 less. We don't need too many, right? Or sorry, can't answer. I'm subscribing right now. I will be right back. We're gonna keep that hint up there just for a second. Kelsey enjoys that. And yes, so if you were subscribing, you still got that correct. But yes, we're around 87 more YouTube subscribers on Gayta Science to get a custom URL. Ooh, oh wow. Okay, our bottom row are switching out here. All right, we're almost done. So Gayta Science made their film debut with Blank and the Amazing Green Traveling Bus. We have Sesame Street, Netflix, Road Trip Nation, or Reading Rainbow. All right, let's see what we got. Yes, Road Trip Nation. One day it'll be Reading Rainbow and Sesame Street. Let's see. We can only go up from here. There we go. Oh, okay. Where are fighting words now? I don't know. All right, so according to Gayta Science's countdown, when did official merch debut? December 2020, June 1995, we were ahead of our time, January 2018, or July 2017? Yes, January 2018. What? Who had their cheat sheets out? Whoa, that totally changed up. All right, I think Darwin is permanently there for a second. So what organization has Gayta Science not worked with yet? We got the Pudding, UMD, UVA, or Road Trip Nation. Who have they not worked with yet? Let's see, everybody's in. University of Maryland. So yes, Gayta Science has worked with UVA before. And the Pudding, the music, the top 100 queer songs. Whoa, okay, that switched up everything. What? Sage looks so happy. All right, here we go. This is the last one. Complete Gayta Science's description. Blank and blank with the LGBTQ focus. Data science and analytics, rainbows and unicorns, computer stuff and code, analytics and data science. I would have chosen computer stuff and code because it's so confusing to me sometimes. Yes, data science and analytics. All right, here we go. Who's getting our merch? Okay, let's see here. In third place, we have Lauren Green. Congratulations. Second place, Marshall was up there, and the merch goes to Sage. Woo! Also, honorary mention, Cory and Max. Congratulations. I hear you trying to unmute yourself, Kels. You've had transporter. I don't know. Yes.
That's embarrassing. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. But congrats, Sage. Definitely DM us your address and we will get you some awesome merch that you might already have. All right. Okay, it is back to me, isn't it? We're only half